15 black celebrities raising children with special needs you never knew about. Hollywood shows you the fame, but not the fights happening behind closed doors. These black celebrities built legendary careers while raising children facing real challenges the world rarely sees. So what's really hidden beyond the spotlight? Stay with us and subscribe to Black Legends Revealed for stories that uncover the truth behind the image. Toni Braxton. Toni Braxton's voice once defined heartbreak for an entire generation, but the most personal challenge of her life unfolded far from any microphone. At the height of her success, while the world saw elegance and control, she was navigating something far more uncertain at home. Her youngest son, Diesel, was diagnosed with autism in early childhood, a moment that shifted everything. The applause, the awards, the image of perfection, none of it prepared her for learning how to understand her child's unique way of communicating, responding, and experiencing the world around him. In the years that followed, Toni chose not to hide that journey. She spoke publicly about the importance of early diagnosis, structured therapy, and consistent support, becoming one of the few major artists willing to discuss autism openly at the time. She partnered with organizations like Autism Speaks and used interviews to emphasize awareness, especially within communities where these conversations were often avoided. How many parents are quietly navigating uncertainty, wishing someone with a voice would speak up for them? That question shaped her advocacy because Toni understood that visibility could change not just perception, but access to help. Diesel's progress over time became part of that story. With intervention and support, he developed stronger communication skills and confidence, eventually stepping into modeling and public appearances. Toni later shared that doctors even re-evaluated aspects of his diagnosis as he improved, highlighting how early care can influence long-term outcomes. Her place in 15 black celebrities who have children with disabilities is not defined by tragedy but by transformation. Hollywood celebrated her voice but rarely showed the quieter strength behind it. The patience, the learning, the resilience of a mother who refused to let fear define her child's future. Holly Robinson Peete. Holly Robinson, Peete's story is not just about fame. It is about a mother learning to fight in silence before the world understood her battle. Known for 21 Jump Street Hangin' with Mr. Cooper and her long career in television, Holly had already built a polished Hollywood image. But behind the red carpets and cameras, her family faced a life-changing diagnosis when her son, RJ, was diagnosed with autism at age 3. Doctors reportedly warned that he might never speak in a meaningful way or live independently, words that could have shattered any parent's hope. Instead of hiding the pain, Holly and her husband, former NFL quarterback Rodney Peete, slowly turned that private fear into public purpose. RJ's journey became central to their family's mission. Holly has spoken openly about the confusion, grief, and determination that came after the diagnosis. The therapy sessions, the unanswered questions, the daily work of helping her child be seen beyond a label. Have you ever wondered how many celebrity families are smiling in public while fighting for their child behind closed doors? What makes Holly Robinson Peete fit this title so strongly is the way she transformed motherhood into advocacy. Through the Holly Rod Foundation, she helped support families affected by autism and Parkinson's disease, creating resources for people who often feel forgotten. RJ later proved many early predictions wrong, growing into a young man with confidence, employment experience, and public visibility. Holly's story carries emotional power because it is not built on tragedy alone. It is built on refusal. The refusal to let Hollywood image matter more than family truth, and the refusal to let one diagnosis define a child's entire future. Taraji P. Henson. Taraji P. Henson built her career on precision, sharp timing, emotional clarity, and a presence that refuses to be ignored. From Hustle and Flow to her defining run as Cookie Lion in Empire, she mastered characters who speak loudly and move with certainty. But her most revealing role has unfolded off-camera, shaped by motherhood. Her son, Marcel Johnson, has spoken about living with anxiety and the pressures that come with growing up in a visible family. Henson has been candid about the signs she noticed: early withdrawal stress responses, the quiet weight that doesn't announce itself. In a culture that often expects strength to look unbreakable, she chose to recognize vulnerability as something real, something that required care rather than denial. That decision led her into advocacy long before it became widely discussed. In 2018, Henson founded the Boris Lawrence Henson Foundation, named after her father, to address mental health challenges in Black communities. The work wasn't abstract, it was informed by what she saw at home: the difficulty of finding culturally competent therapists, the stigma that keeps families silent, and the urgency of early support. She has described conversations with her son about therapy, about naming emotions, about building tools to cope rather than suppress. Have you ever considered how different a child's future can look when someone finally listens instead of dismissing what they feel? What places Taraji P. Henson within this title is not spectacle, but the quiet seriousness of a condition that often goes unseen. Mental health struggles in children rarely show up in obvious ways, yet they shape identity, confidence, and daily life. By speaking openly, Henson shifted the narrative from secrecy to acknowledgement, from isolation to access. Her son's journey is not defined by limitation but by awareness and support. Taraji P. Henson's story carries a different kind of weight. It is not about dramatic transformation on screen, but about the steady, deliberate work of protecting a child's inner world. In doing so, she expanded her influence beyond entertainment, turning personal experience into a wider conversation that continues to grow. Shaquille O'Neal. Shaquille O'Neal built a legacy on strength, dominant, unshakable, larger than life. On the court, he controlled the game with power few could match. But away from the spotlight, his role as a father brought a different kind of challenge, one that strength alone could not solve. His son, Shaquille O'Neal, a promising basketball player in his own right, faced a life-altering diagnosis in 2018 when doctors discovered a serious heart condition during a routine medical evaluation. What seemed like a normal path forward suddenly stopped without warning. The diagnosis meant immediate change. Shaquille had to step away from basketball and undergo open-heart surgery at just 18 years old. For a young athlete whose identity was tied to the game, the uncertainty was overwhelming. For Shaquille, watching from the side was its own test. He had faced pressure, injury, and competition throughout his career, but nothing compared to seeing his son confront something beyond control. What does strength really look like when you can't fix the problem, only stand beside it? That question defines this chapter of his life because it forced him to shift from protector to supporter in a situation where outcomes could not be guaranteed. The surgery was successful, and Shaquille slowly returned to training, rebuilding both his body and confidence step by step. His comeback to basketball became a symbol of resilience, not just talent. Shaquille spoke openly about the experience, encouraging others to take health screenings seriously and recognize that even the strongest bodies can carry hidden risks. His story belongs in 15 Black celebrities who have children with disabilities because it reveals a different side of fame. One where the spotlight fades, and what remains is a parent learning to face uncertainty with patience. In that moment, legacy wasn't measured in championships, but in present support and the quiet strength of standing firm when it mattered most. D.L. Hughley. D.L. Hughley built his reputation on sharp observation and fearless humor, a voice that could cut through discomfort and turn tension into laughter. From the Hughleys to his stand-up specials and radio presence, he has always moved with confidence, speaking truths many avoided. But away from the stage, his role as a father demanded a different kind of courage. His son, Kyle Hughley, was diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome, a form of autism spectrum disorder that affects communication, social interaction, and behavior patterns. For a man whose career depends on reading rooms and reacting quickly, raising a child who experienced the world differently required patience, adjustment, and a willingness to relearn connection. Hughley has spoken candidly about the early confusion, misunderstood behaviors, moments of frustration, and the challenge of finding the right support. He described how discipline had to shift into understanding how expectations had to be redefined and how progress often came in quiet, incremental steps rather than dramatic breakthroughs. In interviews and his book, Shame of the Nation, he reflected on how fatherhood forced him to confront his own assumptions about strength and communication. Have you ever considered how much growth it takes for a parent to change themselves before they can truly support their child? What makes D.L. Hughley's story resonate with this title is the transformation that happened behind the scenes. Kyle's condition was not something visible to audiences watching Hughley perform, yet it shaped the emotional core of his life. Over time, Hughley became more open, using his platform to speak about autism with honesty, sometimes humor, but also clarity about the realities families face. D.L. Hughley's journey is not defined by a single moment, but by adaptation. The same man who mastered the rhythm of comedy had to learn a different rhythm at home, one built on patience, listening, and acceptance. In that shift, his story reveals something deeper than performance, the ability to grow, to adjust, and to meet a child where they are, even when the world doesn't always understand how. Usher. Usher built his career on control, precision in movement, clarity in voice, and a stage presence that felt effortless. But one of the most defining moments of his life unfolded far from any spotlight. In 2013, his young son, Usher Raymond V, was involved in a terrifying accident at home when his arm became trapped in a swimming pool drain. What began as an ordinary day shifted in seconds, turning into a crisis that no parent can ever fully prepare for. The situation escalated quickly. Family members and staff rushed to help, struggling against the force of the water until emergency responders arrived. His son was pulled from the pool and taken to the hospital, where he received immediate care. The outcome could have been far worse, and that reality stayed with Usher long after the moment passed. How quickly can everything change, even in a place that feels completely safe? That question lingers in his story because it reflects a truth many families understand but rarely expect to face so directly. In the aftermath, Usher focused on recovery, stability, and protecting his child's well-being. His son survived and continued to grow, but the experience reshaped how Usher approached fatherhood and safety. He later supported awareness around pool safety and supervision, emphasizing the importance of prevention in everyday environments. His place in 15 Black celebrities who have children with disabilities comes from a broader understanding of vulnerability, how a single moment can introduce long-term concern, and how a parent responds when control is no longer guaranteed. For Usher, the stage may have defined his career, but it was in that moment of uncertainty that his role as a father became something deeper, measured not in performance but in presence. Fantasia Barrino. Fantasia Barrino's voice has always sounded like it was carved out of something deeper than technique, raw, textured, almost urgent. When she won American Idol in 2004, the world heard power. What it didn't fully see was the private concern she carried as a young mother. Her daughter Zion Kwari Barrino was later identified as having dyslexia, a learning difference that can make reading and processing language far more challenging. For Fantasia, who has spoken openly about her own struggles with literacy, growing up, the diagnosis didn't arrive as a distant concept. It felt personal, immediate, and familiar. That connection shaped how she responded. Instead of treating it as a limitation, Fantasia leaned into understanding. She has shared in interviews that Zion's journey required patience, specialized support, and a rethinking of how learning could look outside traditional expectations. Dyslexia does not affect intelligence, but it often affects confidence, especially in environments that measure success through reading speed and conventional academic performance. Fantasia recognized those pressures because she had lived them. Have you ever wondered how powerful it is when a parent truly understands the challenge their child is facing, not from theory, but from experience? What makes Fantasia Barrino's story fit this title is the quiet way she turned a shared struggle into guidance. She spoke publicly about both her own literacy challenges and her daughter's experience, helping shift the conversation from stigma to awareness. Zion's growth became part of that narrative, developing confidence, pursuing her interests, and moving forward with support rather than shame. Fantasia's story carries a different kind of strength. It is not built on spectacle or dramatic transformation, but on recognition, the ability to see a challenge clearly and respond with empathy instead of fear. In doing so, she created space not only for her daughter to grow, but for others facing similar paths to feel understood. Monica. Monica's voice carried strength long before life asked her to prove it. Rising to fame as a teenager with The Boy Is Mine, she became a defining figure in R&B while still learning how to balance success and responsibility. But beyond the stage, her most demanding role was motherhood. Her son, Rodney Rocco Hill III, was diagnosed with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD, a condition that doesn't always show itself in obvious ways, but can reshape a child's daily life from school to social interactions. What made the journey challenging was not just the diagnosis, but how easily it could be misunderstood. Monica has spoken about watching her son struggle to focus, manage impulses, and meet expectations in environments that weren't designed for how his mind worked. Teachers raised concerns, routines became difficult, and progress required constant attention. How often do children get labeled as difficult when they are actually trying to navigate something they can't control? That question guided Monica's approach because she refused to let misunderstanding define her son's identity. Instead of stepping back, she leaned in. Monica sought specialized support, worked closely with educators, and made sure her son had the structure and encouragement he needed to succeed. Over time, those efforts began to show results, not just in academic improvement, but in confidence. She also used her platform to speak about ADHD, helping other parents recognize early signs and seek support without stigma. Her place in 15 Black celebrities who have children with disabilities highlights a quieter kind of challenge, one that doesn't always make headlines but affects families every day. Monica's strength wasn't just in her music. It was in her persistence, her advocacy, and her refusal to let her son's story be reduced to a label. Cedric the Entertainer. Cedric the Entertainer built a career on timing, measured pauses, confident delivery, the kind of humor that feels effortless, but is anything but. From The Steve Harvey Show to Barbershop, he became a steady presence, a performer who could hold a room with ease. But beyond the stage, his role as a father introduced a different kind of responsibility, one that required patience rather than punchlines. Cedric has spoken about raising a daughter who faced developmental and learning challenges, a journey that unfolded away from public view. While audiences saw consistency and control in his performances, his home life demanded adaptability, advocacy, and quiet persistence. Those challenges were not defined by a single moment, but by a series of decisions seeking the right educational support, understanding how his child processed the world, and learning when to guide and when to step back. For a man known for commanding attention, this required a shift toward listening. Cedric has acknowledged in interviews that parenting in this context reshaped his priorities, pulling him away from assumptions about what success should look like. Have you ever considered how much a parent must change internally to truly meet their child where they are? What places Cedric the Entertainer within this title is not visibility, but commitment. Developmental differences often remain outside the spotlight, yet they shape daily life in ways that demand long-term dedication. Cedric's approach has been grounded in support rather than spectacle, ensuring his daughter had access to resources, encouragement, and a stable foundation. His story carries a quieter weight. The same man who mastered laughter learned to navigate uncertainty with care trading. Certainty for understanding. Cedric, the Entertainer's journey reveals a side of celebrity rarely highlighted, the ongoing work of parenting a child whose path may not follow expectations, and the strength it takes to honor that path without trying to rewrite it. Kandi Burruss. Kandi Burruss built a career on precision hit records, business moves, and a public image that rarely slipped. But her most defining chapter arrived in a place no spotlight could soften. When her son, Ace Wells Tucker, was born in 2016, what should have been a moment of celebration quickly turned into a test of endurance. Within days, Ace was diagnosed with respiratory distress syndrome, a condition that made even the simplest act, breathing, uncertain. The hospital became their world, measured not in hours, but in monitored breaths and cautious updates. The early days demanded patience few can fully imagine. Ace required close medical supervision, and every improvement came in small, hard-earned steps. Kandi has shared how those moments reshaped her understanding of control, how quickly plans can shift, how fragile even the strongest hopes can feel. How does a parent stay steady when something so basic becomes so uncertain? That question sits at the center of her story because it speaks to a reality many families face quietly without recognition or support. Ace eventually stabilized and grew stronger, leaving the hospital and stepping into a life that to the outside world looked normal. But for Kandi, the experience never fully faded. It stayed as a reminder of how quickly everything can change. She has spoken about that period with clarity, encouraging awareness around early medical care and the importance of support systems for new parents. Her place in 15 Black celebrities who have children with disabilities reflects a different kind of challenge, one that begins at birth and demands immediate resilience. Hollywood saw her success, but not always the moment she had to put everything aside and focus on something far more essential, helping her child survive and then watching him grow. Tracy Morgan. Tracy Morgan's story carries a different kind of gravity, because his connection to this title is not built around a public campaign or carefully shaped advocacy image. It comes from the private reality of being a father whose family life has included special needs parenting while his own body was nearly broken. Long before the 2014 crash that almost ended his life, Morgan had already built a career from Raw Instinct, Saturday Night Live, 30 Rock stand-up stages, where his humor felt wild, fast, and unfiltered. But at home, the rhythm was different. Parenting a child who needed extra support required steadiness, routine, and attention beyond what the public ever saw. Then came the accident on the New Jersey Turnpike. Morgan survived, but recovery was brutal: broken bones, brain trauma therapy, pain, and the emotional weight of returning to a life that no longer felt simple. For a comedian known for explosive energy, being forced into stillness changed everything. The spotlight focused on his comeback, but the deeper question was quieter. How does a father rebuild himself when his family still needs him? That pressure gave his recovery a human weight no applause could fully explain. This is where Tracy Morgan's place in the title becomes powerful. His child's challenges were not turned into spectacle, and his own injuries did not erase his responsibility as a parent. Instead, both realities existed together, one demanding patience, the other demanding survival. His return to television and stand-up was not just professional courage, it was the image of a man learning to walk back into life piece by piece. Tracy Morgan's journey reminds viewers that disability inside a celebrity family does not always come with headlines or polished interviews. Sometimes it lives in daily adjustments, medical appointments, emotional discipline, and the quiet decision to keep going. Behind the laughter was a father carrying more than the audience knew, and that makes his story hit far deeper than comedy alone. Wanda Sykes. Wanda Sykes has always commanded attention with precision, sharp timing, fearless delivery, a voice that cuts clean through any room. From the new adventures of old Christine to decades of stand-up, she built a reputation on clarity and control. But away from the spotlight, her life as a mother introduced a quieter, more demanding rhythm. Sykes and her wife Alex Niedbalski are raising twins, and she has spoken about the realities of parenting children with individual learning and developmental needs differences that don't always show on the surface, but shape how a child engages with the world. For Sykes, the shift wasn't dramatic, it was gradual and deeply personal. She has described the process of recognizing how her children learn how they respond to structure and how traditional expectations don't always fit. That meant adapting, working with educators, exploring different teaching approaches, and creating an environment where her children could develop confidence without being compared to rigid standards. The same woman who built a career on delivering quick, decisive punchlines found herself slowing down, listening more, and rethinking what progress looks like day to day. Have you ever considered how success changes meaning when you're raising a child who doesn't follow the expected path? What places Wanda Sykes within this title is not spectacle but awareness. Developmental differences in children often remain invisible to the outside world, especially in families where public image is carefully maintained. Sykes chose not to dramatize the experience but to acknowledge it with honesty, recognizing that parenting is not about forcing a child into a mold, but about understanding who they already are. Her story carries a grounded strength. The confidence she shows on stage translates into something quieter at home: consistency, patience, and advocacy. Wanda Sykes reminds us that behind even the most outspoken public figures, there can be a deeply attentive parent learning, adjusting, and showing up every day in ways the audience may never fully see. Faith Evans. Faith Evans built her legacy on a voice that carried emotion with precision, rising through the golden era of R&B with a presence that felt both powerful and grounded. But beyond the studio and the stage, her most personal journey unfolded in a quieter space, as a mother learning to understand her son Ryder's needs after he was diagnosed on the autism spectrum. The world saw her resilience through music, but at home, resilience took on a different meaning, one shaped by patience, learning, and the responsibility of advocating for a child whose experience of the world was not always easily understood. What made Faith's story distinct was the shift it required. Autism does not come with a single path, and for Ryder it meant navigating communication behavior and development in ways that demanded consistency and care. Faith has spoken about the importance of structure therapy and creating an environment where her son could grow at his own pace. How many parents have to rewrite their expectations in order to truly meet their child where they are? That question defines her journey, because it was not about changing her son, it was about changing how she supported him. Over time, Faith used her platform to raise awareness, encouraging conversations around autism within communities where it is often misunderstood or overlooked. Her role expanded from artist to advocate, helping other families recognize that early support and acceptance can shape long-term outcomes. Her place in 15 Black celebrities who have children with disabilities reflects a story that is not built on spectacle, but on steady commitment. Hollywood celebrated her voice, but rarely showed the discipline of her motherhood, the daily choices, the adjustments, and the belief that her son's future should be defined by possibility, not limitation. Tisha Campbell. Tisha Campbell's public image was built on rhythm, quick reactions, expressive delivery, a face that could turn a single moment into a full performance. From Martin to My Wife and Kids, she made energy feel effortless, but her life as a mother unfolded along a very different tempo. Her son, Zen Martin, was diagnosed with autism at a young age, a reality that reshaped how she understood communication progress and patience. The diagnosis didn't arrive with easy answers. It came with uncertainty, long stretches of learning, and the realization that traditional expectations would not apply in the same way. What followed was not a dramatic turning point, but a steady recalibration. Campbell has spoken about early challenges, delayed speech behavioral patterns that required deeper attention, and the emotional weight of navigating systems that often fail to support families clearly. She became deeply involved in Zen's development, working through therapy structure and consistent reinforcement. Over time, those efforts began to show results. Zen grew into a young man who developed independence, even pursuing acting and public speaking. The progress wasn't sudden. It was built day by day through repetition and belief. Have you ever considered how many small, unseen victories it takes to build one moment of visible success? What places Tisha Campbell within this title is not just the diagnosis itself, but the way she chose to engage with it. She did not frame her son's condition as limitation, but as a different pathway that required commitment and understanding. Her openness helped bring visibility to autism in Black families, where conversations around developmental differences are often limited by stigma or lack of resources. Tisha Campbell's story carries a grounded kind of strength. The same woman who once dominated comedic timing learned to move at a pace defined by her child's needs. In that shift, her life reveals something deeper than performance, the discipline of showing up, adjusting expectations, and building a future that may look different, but is no less meaningful. Snoop Dogg. Snoop Dogg built his image on cool control, slow delivery, effortless confidence, and a public persona that made pressure look almost invisible. But inside his home, one of the hardest battles began when his daughter, Toni Braxton, was still a child. At only 6 years old, she was diagnosed with lupus, an autoimmune disease that can turn the body against itself. For Snoop and his wife Shantae, the diagnosis changed the rhythm of family life. The world saw a rap icon moving through fame, business, and entertainment, but behind that image was a father watching his little girl face pain medication, fatigue, and questions no child should have to carry so early. Toni's illness did not stay in the background. As she grew older, she spoke about how lupus affected her body, her confidence, and her mental health. Steroid treatments, inflammation, weight changes, and public judgment made childhood heavier than most fans ever realized. Snoop's role became deeper than protection. He had to become a steady presence through uncertainty, learning that love sometimes means standing close when there is no quick solution. Have you ever thought about how different fame looks when a parent would trade every spotlight just to give their child peace? What makes Snoop Dogg's story fit this title is the contrast between public calm and private fear. Toni eventually turned her pain into openness, discussing lupus, depression, healing, and self-worth with a courage that helped others feel less alone. Snoop's support did not erase the struggle, but it gave her room to keep fighting without disappearing behind his celebrity. His journey reminds viewers that even the most recognizable fathers can face battles the audience never sees. Behind the smooth voice and legendary image was a parent learning to sit with fear, hold on to hope, and love a child through a condition that changed everything. These stories remind us that fame never shields a family from real-life challenges, it only hides them better. Behind every spotlight is a parent making difficult choices, learning, adapting, and refusing to give up. So the question remains, has Hollywood truly overlooked these journeys, or have we simply not paid close enough attention? And how many more stories like these are still untold? If this changed how you see success and strength, follow and subscribe to Black Legends, revealed for more powerful stories that go beyond the surface.